We all know that the first 5 years are a critical period for language and attachment in the brain. It's a time when your ordinary day-to-day life has an inordinate impact on who you will become. But what we hear less about is that there's such a thing as adult development, and our 20s are that critical period of adult development. But this isn't what 20-somethings are hearing. Newspapers talk about the changing timetable of adulthood. Researchers call the 20s an extended adolescence. Journalists coined silly nicknames for 20-somethings like twixters and cadults. It's true. As a culture, we have trivialized what is actually the defining decade of adulthood.
So target of blame seems to be why these folks can become so difficult. If you're the target of blame, your life may be ruined by one of these folks. And that's what people need to become aware of. So the target of blame, each of these 5 high conflict personalities tends to zero in generally on one person. It could change over time, but they see that person as the cause of all their problems. And so they want to control that person or eliminate that person or destroy or humiliate that person. It's a fixation on one person, and all of their life problems, they emotionally focus on that person. So you don't want to be one of those folks. How to avoid being a target of blame? First of all, if you see warning signs of this behavior, don't get too close to such a person. You may be a friend, but don't be the closest friend. You may be a coworker, but don't be the closest coworker. Because what seems to happen is the people they get really close to are the ones that are most at risk of becoming their targets of blame. But it could be anybody. They tend to target intimate others and people in authority. So this could be boyfriends, girlfriends, husbands, wives, parents, children, co-workers, neighbors they get close to. It also could be police, could be government agency or a government official, could be their boss, could be the company owner. So they tend to focus on intimate others and or people in authority.
We've been taught that once we start something, we have to finish it. And I think that so often we view books as this linear thing, whereas I think a different view of books is, what information do I need out of this book right now? Is that an entertainment read? Do I need to read from start to finish? Is it a read where I'm comparing different views on a similar problem, especially across nonfiction, right? Am I comparing and contrasting 2 or 3 different authors' argumentation or authors' views on a particular angle to a subject? In which case, I might not need to read the whole book. I just need to read a chapter. But then I've gotten everything out of that book. But books are there to serve you, right? You own the book. The book is your property. It's your mental property. It's your physical property. And you can do with it what you want. And you don't have to feel bad about putting down a book. It's the author's job to pull you into the book. It's your job to extract what you need out of the book. And I think that extracting what you need, you can just read the table of contents, read the introduction, maybe read the conclusion, skim a little bit.
Probably the most interesting fact about human development is the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully mature. It is not completely online until you're about 25 years old, which is mind-boggling to think about. What does that explain? That explains why adolescents are adolescent in their behavior. The sensation-seeking, the risk-taking, the highs are higher and the lows are lower because the steadying frontal cortical hand there isn't fully up to speed yet, and everything else is a gyroscope out of control. And that's where the impulsivity is from. And that's where the extremes of behavior. And that's why most crime is committed by people at a stage whose frontal cortex is not fully developed yet. That is why most people who do astonishing, wondrously self-sacrificial things don't have a frontal cortex that's fully in gear yet either, and is not in a position to convince them yet, somebody else's problem, look the other way. That's why young adults are exactly how they are, because the frontal cortex isn't quite there yet. And what you have as a result is more adventurousness and more open to novelty and more likelihood of seeing somebody who is very different as in fact not to being that different after all, and more likely to grab a cudgel and smash in somebody's skull who happens to seem like a them, and everything, just the tone of everything is pushed up. One incredibly important implication of that is if the frontal cortex is the last part of the brain to fully mature, it means it's the part of the brain that is most sculpted by environment and experience and least constrained by genes. And it's the most interesting part of the brain.
For too long, discussions about climate change has been about sacrifice. I am here to tell you that climate solutions actually makes better city and a better quality of life for everyone. This is only the first of 5 lessons we have learned on our journey to become an emission-free city. And I think this lesson can be applied almost anywhere. So I like to share them. So, lesson number 1, confronting climate change is about creating better cities and better quality of life for everyone, including those kids in the kindergarten that don't have to share their days with noisy excavators. The second lesson is about being ambitious. In 2015, the City Council set a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by 2030, without purchasing any carbon offsets, so aiming for real reductions. Commitment to this goal changed our mindset. If we were going to reach this target, every department had to get active, figure out measures and finding out how to implement them. So second lesson, be ambitious. A target measured in years, not decades, provides no excuse for inaction.